It's as strong as a spell. I'll never tell. Yeah, I like you, that's for sure.
Hi guys, welcome back to Exmo Lex. Today I'm just popping in for the intro. My husband Brendan is actually going to be the one you're hearing from, sharing his Mormon story so that I can have a little bit of a break. So thank you so much, Brendan. And of course, I'm going to remind you right now to like and subscribe. Check the description for ways that you can support the channel or you can follow on other social media. And thank you for being here. And again, big thank you to Brendan.
Hey guys, so we thought it would be a good idea for me to kind of talk about my life growing up in the church this time around. So this is going to be kind of just me winging it, so I hope that it doesn't sound too ridiculous or choppy. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Where to start? I guess from a very young age. I mean, I was born in the church. Never really had a choice in the matter for most of my young life. I was baptized at the age of 8, and that never felt like a choice. We attended church pretty much every Sunday, especially when I was younger. We would go all the time. I don't really remember ever missing a Sunday, and it was kind of just from birth, as long back as I can remember, it was always just, this is the way life is. I didn't have any other viewpoint of the world. I didn't really understand a lot of the way that regular people lived, as far as like drinking and, you know, just stuff that the church doesn't allow you to do, but regular people do. I looked down on a lot of that growing up pretty harshly and was taught to think that way. It kind of comes with being LDS. There was a lot of racist comments and jokes and things like that, and jabs made at people who were not straight or whatever the case may be, and I always went along with that as a child because that's the way that I was raised, and we were taught, you know, forever that those things are a sin, and I don't know, it always just felt like this weird disconnect in my head. Like, we were taught to look at certain people as inferior, but then we'd turn around and say that we loved everyone, and that always in the back of my mind kind of felt weird, and I couldn't come to terms with it obviously until we left the church. I mean, a little bit before that I started to, I think, nuance a little bit, but when we finally left the church, that just completely flipped. And now I try to obviously look at everyone with respect and an open mind, and I really want to treat people like people and not hold anything over anybody. I'm the type of person that will trust people until they give me a reason not to trust them. Pretty much going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I think that that's the way that people should be treated, fairly and equally. Anyway, back to being a young child. So I don't remember how early on this started, but all growing up we would read scriptures every morning, especially once I was in like grade school. We would get up at like the ass crack of dawn and read a chapter of the Book of Mormon or a chapter of the Bible. I think we went through the entire quad, and I hated it growing up, and all of us would always put up a stink about it. Obviously, one of us on a different morning than the other. Sometimes it was multiple, me and my siblings that would complain about it. I have a brother and 2 sisters, and a lot of the time we would complain about doing that because it was so boring, and we were up so early, and then we'd get in trouble for falling asleep during reading, and I just remember hating that from the very beginning. It was awful. I did all the usual stuff in church. I mean, once I was baptized, which again, that didn't really feel like a choice to me. Really, it was just expected from the time that I can remember. Same with the mission. Those things were just talked about so much growing up that it was like when you get baptized and when you go on a mission, and there was never like, well, you can decide to do that if you want, and if you don't go, we'll still love you and it won't matter. It was always when you go, when you get baptized, when you get married in the temple, so it's all just like ingrained into you from a very early age. There's no, as much as Mormons love to pretend and say like there's choice in the matter, there is absolutely not choice when you're raised in a very, very staunch Mormon house. And that was the funny thing is, with a lot of that, it was very staunch, but then there were other things that were not, and I always found that odd as well. Like, both my parents absolutely loved and still love and joke about dirty humor and things like that, and they liked some movies that I kind of thought was strange for a Mormon family. My favorite movie growing up was Ace Ventura, and they introduced me to that at a pretty young age, and I thought it was hilarious. And I mean, we would laugh at stuff like the whole, like, Bumblebee tuna, your balls are showing, and we just thought that was funny. So it was weird to me that we would act that way, but then we had this belief that was the opposite way, and it just felt like, I don't know, I felt confused for a lot of my young life because of things like that, where it was just all kind of hypocritical. And I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just kept going along with the program, you know, for a long time. So yeah, I was a deacon, I was a teacher, I was a priest, I did all the, like, passing the sacrament, all that stuff. I taught lessons in church off and on. I was in Boy Scouts, I did Cub Scouts before that, and never really had any bad experiences. I know there are some people that have had horrible experiences with scout leaders and things, and honestly, none of that was even a reality to me growing up. I had no clue that that stuff even happened, and I feel fortunate for that. My dad was a scout leader, and so was my mom for a while, and maybe that had something to do with the fact that there never seemed to be anything weird going on. But they were with me on a lot of those trips and things, and those memories for the most part are generally good. Definitely did have a lot of fun in Scouts, and my mom and dad both pushed me pretty hard to get my Eagle Scout at like 14 and a half or 15. I did a project for an orphanage where they had a gymnasium that needed, it was basically a gym with they didn't have basketball hoops or like any kind of lines on the floor for sports, and so I believe later they got hoops put in, but my project was to come up with a way to layer basketball lines and volleyball lines and like floor hockey lines all over the top of each other and do them in different colors. We refinished the floor, painted those so that the kids could actually play different sports according to like the rules and stuff. So that was also a good memory. I had several friends from the church come and help out. My cousin, who was also LDS, came and helped me out. So I just want to make it clear before I keep going that, like, growing up with my family, I loved my family. I still love them, even though my parents and my two sisters no longer talk to me. And I know that you guys have followed this channel for a while and are probably aware of most of the stuff that happened, but there were good memories growing up. They did teach me good values, and I clung to those values so much that I think that's one of the main reasons that when Lexi and I started finding out the truth about the LDS Church, that's why we left so quick. I've always held to that deeply rooted belief, just of trying to find truth and treating everyone equally and finding the right and doing the right, and that doesn't exist in the Mormon Church. There is some of it, and I definitely don't think those people are bad people, but to be able to truly follow what Jesus taught, as far as I had studied and read, it doesn't exist in Christianity, and that's just the way it is for me. It's the way I view it now, and I just feel like a better person and a less judgmental person after leaving the LDS Church and dogma as a whole. So anyway, jumping back to growing up, high school was interesting. It had a lot of weird rules and stuff as far as friends and, you know, what I was allowed to do. I had a friend who at the time was very into like deathcore, death metal, one of my best friends in school growing up, and he would invite me to these shows and stuff, and all I had really been to, and I don't even know, I might have been later, was Van Halen and like a couple classic rock concerts, and I was never allowed to go with him to the heavier stuff, even though I wanted to at least give it a try. And I always thought that was kind of kind of crappy. We had other rules. We couldn't really play with friends or hang out with friends on Sunday except for like family, so our cousins would come over a lot, and thank God we at least had that, because Sundays were usually super boring. I remember I got in trouble one Sunday because it was really boring. We were like rewatching conference talks, or it was conference or something, and both my parents fell asleep on the couch. My siblings kind of had fallen asleep, and everybody was just kind of like doing nothing. It was quiet. I got bored, so I went down and started playing Smash Bros on the N64, which Smash Bros is like my favorite series of game, apart from Zelda. But I got really big into Smash Bros, and that's a huge part of me, just growing up and everything. I love that game. So I went down to our basement and started playing, and I remember my dad came and looked through the window well into the basement and saw me, and I got in trouble, and we were not allowed to play video games on Sunday. So, you know, I didn't bother asking because I was afraid I'd just get told no, so I tried to sneak and go play, which is a pretty stupid thing to be upset at a kid for. I mean, my kids play video games, and I really don't care if they play or how long they play, because they're kids, and when they play for a while, they on their own tend to get up and go do something else because they get tired of it. And because I had so much limitation put on that as a kid, I think it really, I mean, I became obsessed with playing video games, and I got in trouble that day, and my dad told me that if I had just asked, he would have let me play. And I was like, I've asked before, and I've never been allowed to do this, and that just was another thing that felt so weird to me growing up. I can't remember if I've told the Santa Claus story, but when I was growing up, I got up in the middle of the night also to play Smash Bros. N64, and I was in the middle of unlocking Captain Falcon earlier in the day, so I'd left the power on, and I got up in the middle of the night to play and try and unlock him. And we had one of those really old TVs that when you turn the power off, it would leave a light in the middle of the screen, which is so shitty. But I got up to play, and I was being super quiet, and I heard someone get up upstairs from my parents' side of the house where their room was. And so I freaked out, and I hurried and turned the TV off and like paused the game and ran back to my room and got back in my bed and pretended to be asleep. Oh, my parents came downstairs, and my mom said that she had just had a bad feeling from the spirit that something was wrong. And they came down, and I got the ass chewing of a lifetime over that. Screamed at, yelled at. My dad actually came into the family room in the basement where the TV was and just straight ripped the Nintendo 64 out of the wall and out of the back of the TV. It like destroyed the auxiliary cables and everything. I was in a panic, freaking out, because this was the thing I loved to do more than anything else, and it was a gift for me from Santa Claus for Christmas, and I believe I was only 8 or 9 at the time. And I told them that they couldn't do this. That was a gift from Santa, not them. It was mine, blah, blah, blah. And my dad straight up screamed at me, "I am Santa Claus!" And that rocked me for years. I laugh about it and joke about it now because it kind of is a funny story, but at the time, that was incredibly traumatic. And this whole vendetta against video games and how much video games I play, I started to realize it was coming from the church and the instructions of the church and the instructions of just the Christian lifestyle in general. I never felt like I was doing any harm playing video games. I always felt like it kept me out of trouble, and it gave me something to do. It helped my hand-eye coordination, and it was a big part of who I was. It's something I love to do. And to just take that away, I think I was grounded for at least a year, and then after a year, I mean, it could have been more or less, give or take, I don't remember perfectly, but I was grounded for a long time. and then when I did get it back, I didn't have controllers or games by my console. I had to go to their room and check it out like a library, and I had to do that in front of friends. And when I'd go over to friends' houses, they'd tell me no Nintendo, and I got around that obviously because they didn't understand the difference between Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation. So they'd ask, did you play Nintendo? And I'd say, no, I played Xbox. It didn't count. That was incredibly traumatic, and the importance of that to me was always downplayed in my family and by the church. And I mean, I played pretty competitively when Smash Bros. Melee came out, and I was really into it. I'd gotten pretty good at the game. I went and won some tournaments. I beat the #1 player in Idaho at the time, which it was a super small deal, but good enough that I felt like I had a chance competing, and I'd won some money from tournaments already, and I really wanted to go forward with that. And at least try it out, try going to like a real statewide competition or a nationwide competition, and it was always just laughed at. It was looked down on, it was laughed at. This was like my dream at the time. I really wanted to try this. I thought if I can make a living doing this, this would be the most awesome thing ever. And I was always just told that I can't make any money doing that. It's not a real job, I need to get a real job. There was never really I didn't have any support in that ever. And I also wanted to go into cartooning. I do draw a little bit, a lot less now. But I was drawing cartoons and coming up with my own characters and stuff in high school. And I drew from an early age and was pretty good at it. And again, it was the sort of thing where I would ask all the time to be put in art classes, and I didn't get into like a real art-focused class until high school. And I'd been asking in elementary school to do like extracurricular art. I took like one little required art class in middle school that was it was really superficial. There wasn't a whole lot to it for like one semester, and that really didn't scratch the itch. But again, I was told that I probably wouldn't make any money doing that, and I just never felt like I had support from the people who were supposed to be giving it to me the most. And as I got older, I felt more and more like the church was to blame for that in the back of my mind. I still believed like wholeheartedly, and what I really hung on to was the whole families being together after we die thing, and that was really what kept me there, I think, because I hated going to church. It was super boring. The only reason I feel like I went was to see friends. But I did have a testimony for those TBMs that watch this and be like, see, you didn't really believe. No, I believed hardcore. And especially when Lexi and I, before we left the church, we were doing everything and following everything to the letter as closely as we could. Anyway, so I wanted to go and try playing Melee professionally, and instead of that, or instead of getting a jump start on art, I had to put it all on hold for a mission that I felt very forced into. I really didn't feel like I had a choice, and no one once ever told me that if I don't go, it will be okay, and I don't have to go if I don't want to. Not a single person. From every member of my family, it was always just, we can't wait for you to go, it'll be so exciting, it'll be such a great experience for you. Going into the MTC and having to leave my family and go be alone for the first time with no real proper preparation for that was devastating. I cried for a long time. I felt super alone. I did make some friends in the MTC though, some good guys that I was buddies with, and we had a fun time. More so just hanging out with each other than the whole church thing of it. I still look back on my mission in the MTC with some fond memories, mostly for the friends that I made. Other than that, it was a horrible, terrible experience. When I was growing up in my home ward up until I left on my mission, we had one of the most tight-knit groups of young men I think that there ever was. It just, everybody in the ward, for the most part, in the young men was super close in my age group. But I was really close with, like, when I was a priest, I was really close with some of the teachers too, or the deacons, and we just had a really good group of young men and guys that we really bonded. We went on camping trips a lot, and I still look back on all that. It's just, all those memories were good. And so, I mean, I can't sit and say that the church was absolutely 100% terrible, because some of that was awesome. And if any of those guys ever come across this and watch that, just know that I loved you guys, and I still do. You were awesome to grow up with. So from an early age, I was pretty attached to like rock and metal music, and a lot of the stuff that I liked to draw also was kind of, I liked like things like skulls and zombies and weapons and just, you know, teenage boy stuff. And I would, I'd get chastised in church for like doodling, that kind of stuff, and not paying attention. And then after my mission, when I went to college, and I'd go to the singles ward, and this is where I really started to feel like the church wasn't what it made itself out to be. I was in a couple different singles wards, I think, and I would go and just, I mean, there's one where I had some buddies because they were my roommates, but there were other ones I ended up going to where I didn't feel like I connected with anyone. I didn't feel like I had any friends, and I would sit kind of by myself off to one side in the classroom or the chapel, and I would just doodle and draw stuff, and I'd always, you know, be listening to metal music and stuff, and I just remember getting all sorts of judgmental looks, and it was not very, it's not like it was like they were trying to hide it. It was pretty obvious that I was being looked down on, and that always bothered me. It started to eat me up a lot, and I've dealt with quite a bit of depression that started in my teenage years and carried through my mission and got absolutely horrible on my mission, and into college it was pretty bad too. I just didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, and the only place that I felt like I actually fit in, which was ironic because it wasn't at church, was I'd go to concerts, and I would sing along with people who were also there to see that band, and that really felt more like home and more like a family than the church did ever. I would get judged a lot for that, and it felt strange because a lot of the music I'd listen to had either lyrics or themes in metal, which just gets a bad rap to begin with, but there are actually a lot of songs and a lot of bands that promote equality and unity and standing up against corruption and things like that. And so I was listening to this stuff and being told it was wrong and being treated a certain other way by these people that were supposed to be righteous and following God so closely, and that just always ate at me in the back of my mind. It never felt right, and I would say super cringy stuff. I'd go into like priesthood quorum after my mission and say stuff like, I've been trying to make progress, I'm trying to like edit out lyrics and songs and try to pick like less just like brutally heavy songs, but still be able to listen to metal because I love it and everything. And the looks I would get from everybody in the room, I just felt like I was alone, completely alone. I had a couple friends in college, and I still talk to some of those guys. They're pretty good buddies of mine, but there were some really, really, really bad moments where I felt just completely alienated. by this church that I'd grown up with, and I was taught that every church you go to, every location is going to teach the same thing, and you can go to any city and it'll all just be like family. And it never felt that way. I missed my home ward during the period of Young Men's, where I had this really tight-knit group of guys that they knew who I was and what I liked and what I liked to listen to, and it didn't seem like it mattered to them. We were all just really tight-knit anyway, and I didn't feel that in college. I haven't, even when Lexi and I got married and we'd start going to our own family ward, I never felt that with anyone ever again. And so that was another thing I think I put on my shelf, that maybe that had nothing to do with the church, and it really was that we ended up clicking really well and being friends, and I could find that outside of the church anyway. It's funny that the church teaches that family is everything, and growing up I thought that, no matter what, my family would be there for me, and it's been hard. I do not understand what we did to deserve the way that my parents treated us, and I haven't really talked about this yet publicly. I've told a few people, but I just always thought that, because growing up, me and my siblings were pretty close and we did a lot of stuff together, and I just always thought that, we'd always have each other, we'd always have each other's back. And for them to say the things that they've said about my wife behind our backs and treat us the way we did just because we found out and weren't happy about it, they'd rather cling to this stupid organization, this church that is easily proved incorrect when you do some research. They'd rather hold to that and be stubborn instead of just making a small apology and trying to be there for their family. It just blows my mind. I've learned a lot through my life, and I don't think I would change anything, but if I was given the choice, like if I hadn't grown up in the church and was given the choice whether or not to join when I'd gotten older, I definitely wouldn't have. I feel like I'm living so much more authentically now and able to just be my true self. I can go to the concerts I want to and mosh and headbang with people who are there to have fun like I am, and I feel more bonded with them than I ever did with just strangers in the church who were supposed to be your family, your eternal family. You just live a normal life and it feels good. I feel happier than I've ever been in my life at this point, and I just feel like things have gotten better and better over the years despite what the church continues to tell you. But growing up in it was just absolutely insane. There's so many things that, I can't touch on everything in this video, but just lots of childhood experiences that were strange and didn't make sense. I guess the last one I would mention before I wrap it up is that a big part of my testimony hinged on this experience I had as a young kid where, so when I was really little, I loved Hot Wheels cars. And I was at my grandparents' house, and I had misplaced my Hot Wheels cars, and my grandma told me to come and say a prayer with her to ask God to help find them. And I prayed with her, and we pretty much walked around the corner and found them. And I remember holding on to that for a long time as a part of my testimony, and that the church was true. And I would tell that story over the pulpit during talks or bearing testimony or whatever. And now I look back on it and I'm like, why? I still love my grandma and I still have good memories about her, but why would you I know she knew where those were. I know she knew they were right there around the corner. Why, instead of just showing me where they were, would you use that as an opportunity to make me think that there's some other invisible being who led me to them when you knew where they were? I can't understand that. Why you would, I mean, it's so dishonest to go about that in such a weird roundabout way instead of just helping your kid or your grandchild. Like, here, they're right here. I saw them, you left them over there. What does giving them false hope in someone that doesn't exist achieve? Because all it's done, all being a member of the church has done, and having that belief has really done, is tear my birth family apart. It hasn't accomplished anything else. I mean, I've learned life lessons, we can say that much, but it would have been nice to have learned them growing up normally instead of having to find out the hard way as an adult and having my world completely flipped upside down and my family ripped away from me. Anyway, I hope that someone can relate to this. I hope it helps somebody if you're going through something similar. If you're a younger person and you're watching this and trying to decide whether you should go on a mission, or you're watching without anybody knowing, you know, and you're scared about going, please don't go. Do whatever you can not to. As much as it might hurt for your family to disown you or be mad at you for making that choice, you'll be happier that you did in the long run. I just hope that anyone who is still a member that watches these videos and tries to find problems with what we say and be judgmental, you weren't there. You didn't live my life. And Christ taught to have empathy for other people. And if you can't see after all the videos that my wife has put out that this church traumatizes people, this church hurts people, it sets up the perfect storm. If you can't see that by now, I don't know what to tell you, but you need to stop bagging on these people who've had these traumatic experiences, because it does happen. I wouldn't change a thing about my life. I love my kids and I love my wife, and I would never want to be without them. But it would have been cool as a teenager to be able to follow a career path that I wanted to. I did go to college for animation for a couple of years. The way that I was raised, things were so strict, and my parents would call me almost daily for a while to get on me about grades and attendance and things like that. And I had never been out on my own. I'd never been free to make the decision to just say, I don't feel like going. I don't feel like being told what to do, because I'd been told what to do for my entire childhood. I think that when I got to college and was taking courses that I was actually interested in, it kind of just undid everything. And honestly, I met Lexi and things got just fantastic from there. So I stopped going to classes partially because of that, and I'm glad that I did, because I'm so happy with her and where I'm at now, and she's just the best wife I could ever ask for. She's the bravest person I know. I don't know how she gets on and just, you know, does this every week, despite being belittled and talked down to by so many people, and that she still just sticks with telling the truth and being upfront and honest with people. And so I hope she knows, and I hope you guys know, that she is one of the best people on earth. She's one of the best people I've ever met. One of the kindest, most soft-hearted people I've ever met, who only has a desire to help people who are in need. Anyway, sorry that got kind of heavier than I wanted it to in places, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope we connected on some level, and I look forward to being in another video again to talk to you guys some more. Anyway, bye. And keep it metal, please.
Never tell, just trust that I'll keep it locked in a cell. Never revealing no secrets you're keeping. These promises strong as a spell. I'll never tell.
Yeah, I like you, that's for sure. Never have to close the door. Been a long time, a year before.